We're running just a second late because the group before us didn't get out of here until right close to time. So if you need to sign up on the sign up sheet to speak, you can do that right now. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting, the House Education Curriculum Subcommittee, to order. Representative Clark, will you open us in a word of prayer, please?
Glad to. Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, just thank you for another day that we get to work for the people of Georgia. Just be with us and help us be wise in our decisions on legislation. Help us to always put the children and their best interests first. And just bless everyone in this room. In the name of the Lord Jesus, amen.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for being here today, members of the committee and members of the audience. We have had a really, really long week this week, and we're getting to the end of it. Today we are going to be looking at Senate Bill 211, and let's see, what do I have? We're going to take that one up first. The SB 211 CSFA, is that what we've got? And I'm going to, at this time, I'm going to call the author of the bill, Chairman Hickman, up to the table to present his bill. No, you can be at the podium or the table if you want to sit down, whichever. Okay. Okay, whenever you are ready. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm gonna hit it. I'm gonna start off with this. Hopefully, some of y'all were able to see last night on Lawmakers. Representative Ballard, Representative Wade, and myself, and Senator Elena Parent talked about the House bill, and we also talked about Senate Bill 211, House Bill 538. I'm going to start off. I think if I had to talk about the buzzword for this session, I think the buzzword for the session has been literacy. The more we talk about it, the more we figure out is that we don't have a literacy problem. We got an illiteracy problem. And Representative Wade used a word last night that I like to use a lot. When we talk about education, I'm tired of hearing people talk about expense for education. We need to keep thinking of education as an investment. Amen. Thank you. We started on this. I'm going to give a little bit of history. I'm going to talk fast, so hopefully if I need to slow down, please stop me. But we started working on this last summer. Actually, Joy Hawkins, myself, and Irene Munn, along with several representatives and senators, had 5 different RESA meetings and actually met with 58 different school superintendents over the summer. And we realized very fastly that the graduation rates that we're incurring in Georgia, 85, 90, and 95%, does not represent our literacy rates. Our graduation rates are way up here. Our literacy rates are way down here. So that's what's prompted all of this. So, you know, we know that in Georgia, in order to create an educated workforce, which we need with all the jobs that are coming here, our children have got to be able to read, and that's the issue. If you look at the numbers that's put out by the Governor's Office on Student Achievement, only 43.49% of the children in the 3rd grade in the state of Georgia are reading on 3rd grade level. 57% of our children are not reading on grade level. How can we create an educated workforce if that does not happen? So I want to I want to tell y'all this is not a Republican bill. This is not a Democrat bill. This is a everybody bill. Just like House Bill 538 is an everybody bill. So I'd like to thank y'all for allowing us to be here today. We actually met, the Higher Education Committee and the Senate Education met jointly with 16 different, or listened to 16 different organizations the first 2 weeks of the session. And we learned that every organization, except for one, said we got a literacy problem, or we got a illiteracy problem, and that's what's prompted all this. Senate Bill 211 was endorsed, or has been endorsed by the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and endorsed by the Sandra Deal Center for Early Language and Learning at the Georgia College University. What does this bill do? This bill complements House Bill 538. I don't want in any way for anybody to go out of this room not thinking that we have worked great with Representative Ballard and Representative Wade. We've sat down probably 4 times at least. And so we had some stuff in our bill that was in their bill, and we took it out, and we actually put some meat. I think some of our people use meat around the bone as a term. We actually took some of the meat around the bone out of their bill, and because our bill is a council that is going to be a comprehensive review of birth to post-secondary on issues to improve literacy. And their bill has a lot of information in there on reading and reading and all. And we've taken theirs and we've made it a part of our council looking at what they're talking about. Very, very good. If our bill is patterned after, several of y'all were here, our bill is patterned after Governor Nathan Deal's bill, which is the criminal justice reform. And so this council will be a 3-year council. They'll meet 4 times a year. There'll be a representative from the governor's office, not the governor's office, but governor appointments, the speaker appointments, the lieutenant governor appointments, and then we will have different other agencies that will be involved, like the DOE and the Board of Regents, so forth and so on. We will issue a report. Hopefully, I'll be on the committee. We will issue a report once a year in November to the governor, lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House. Let me tell you some parts that we're going to be looking at on this council. We're going to be looking at birth to 5 and also pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. Big deals. We learned very, very fastly through our work on this bill is that not all children attend pre-kindergarten and not all children attend kindergarten. So you have got a lot of children that are already 2 years behind when they come into school. We're going to be looking, and this is the chancellor's statement, we're going to be looking at whether teachers coming out of universities and colleges now are being taught how to teach children how to read. We're going to be looking at, as I said earlier, we met with 16 or had 16 presentations to us over the first 2 weeks of session, and different organizations measure differently the metrics of reading. And so we're going to be looking at trying to devise a universal metric that all of us can live with and we can measure our children by. And probably one of the most important things that really bothers me on this more than anything else is that we have got to get our communities involved. Many times over the summer, I've spoken on this issue, and I've told people, I said, everybody wants to blame the teachers. It's not a teacher issue. Everybody wants to blame the principals. It's not a principal issue. Everybody wants to blame the superintendents. It's not a superintendent's issue, but it really is a superintendent's issue because our superintendents have not told us that our children can't read. And if they would have told us this, I think our communities would have rose up and addressed this issue. So we have got, and of course we've been steadily working on this, and so we have got a friendly amendment to incorporate some information that Representative Ballard and Representative Wade wanted us to include in our bill, in Senate Bill 211, and I think you have just received that in your folder just in the last few minutes. This information was given to Michael, the attorney, in the last, I guess, actually yesterday. And we're all in agreement with this. And anything to add more meat around the bone, we're all for. I think, Mr. Chairman, unless I have some questions, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but this is an exciting bill along with your bill. It is a priority. Again, we've got to invest in our children, time. And money's not the answer. You know, we look at schools, we look at school systems, I forgot about these people. We look at school systems in our area and the school systems, we got some school systems that are spending the most money in our area, but the children are the most underperforming. And we gotta look at those situations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have a question here. 16, is that Representative Evans or Representative Carter? I should have. I knew it was you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you for bringing this bill. It's very seldom that I find much that makes me really smile. And I looked at the amendment and I smiled.
Thank you.
Because
well, you can thank this lady right up here.
oh, trust me, she knows how I feel about that particular part. Because one of the things I thought was really critical when we passed HB 538 is the literacy coaches. And I really don't believe that we're going to have the type of success and impact if we don't have that component. Additionally, we've got to fund it. But I wanted to ensure that in this line where we're adding the where the Office of Student Achievement is going to be responsible for hiring the Georgia literacy coach and coordinate it. So are we looking at it from a standpoint that we will have sufficient coaches throughout the state to make sure that all the districts have the resources they need? Because one of the things that came up in testimony was how teachers are being trained but not necessarily trained to teach kids to read. So I want to make sure that as we're looking through this and as you're counseling all the things, and I think this is amazing, it's wonderful, that we really are, that it's not just a line on a piece of paper, but we're serious about equipping the districts with what they need to ensure that we have an educated, not just a workforce, but children are reading on grade level by third grade, because I know that is a goal.
Yes, ma'am. Let me address that in two ways. First of all, as you well know, we're working on a budget right now.
Yes.
And hopefully this doesn't sound wrong, sound bad, but the House version, because the House didn't know anything about this, the House version did not have anything about the literacy coaches and all that. We met with Joy Hawkins with the Office of Student Achievement, and she is working us up a budget that I'm chairman of the Appropriations, Higher Education and Education in the Senate, and those numbers will be in our budget. One thing that Representative Wade brought up in our conversation was, and I like this idea, is that we will have a literacy coach for Office of Student Achievement, but we really need to look at our regions of Georgia and have sub-literacy coaches that report back to the person of Office of Student Achievement. So again, this is a work in progress, but we're getting there. And so those numbers will be included in our part of the budget.
I want to say thank you. And in some communities, this really has been an outcry. And I'm really excited that the fact that the state of Georgia is finally addressing this issue. So thank you so much for this bill.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your comments.
Okay, Representative Evans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. I'm supportive of this bill as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I'm also, been a student of evidence-based literacy, and I want to make sure our state does align all of our standards with evidence-based literacy practices and improves our literacy rate. So one thing I want, as a part of this council, one thing I'd like, I guess the council will probably decide, but I do think at some point having a dashboard for our literacy rates is appropriate. And so that's why I do support this council residing under, this would not reside under GOSA, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I do think we need to hold our state accountable for improving our literacy rates, and I think a dashboard of these hopeful improvements over the next few years will be helpful. And also, as we talked about before committee, I did have a bill 537 that I think would be a nice companion to this. So I'll speak with you about that. But that established, Chancellor Perdue spoke with before you all in committee and talked about that. Unfortunately, we do have reading programs that are not that are being taught at our schools teaching schools that are not evidence-based literacy programs, and so this bill the language I would be able to offer you if you're interested would be to align the GACE standards, the Professional Standards Commission, with evidence-based literacy instruction, and also for DeKalb to make sure they provide evidence-based literacy instruction.
I would love to meet with you next week.
Okay.
And let me mention this one thing that we've learned through this process also, and thank you so much for y'all's comment, is that we have a real dyslexia problem also in Georgia. And when we are learning that, and our bill address that, we're going to look specifically at that. And 22% of the children in Georgia experience some form of dyslexia. And I have been amazed that the people at the Capitol, since we have brought this out, have walked up to me. Some real strong leaders in our Capitol have walked up to me and said, "Senator, I've got a form of dyslexia, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 9 years old. I've got a form of dyslexia, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 6 years old. I've got a form," and blah, blah, blah type deal. That's really the other thing we're going to be looking at in this. Dyslexia was a Senator Parent idea. Senator Orrick brought up, we need to look at English as a second language. We've got a lot of Hispanic children in our school systems that parents do not speak English. So when they go home at night, they don't have anybody to read to them and sit down with them. And poverty, as we all know, is a great issue. So thank y'all for your comments.
Okay, thank you so much. We don't have any more questions, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, do I have a second? Okay, and we do have some amendments. You've got these on your sheet. They were discussed, but we just couldn't get it into a sub in time. So do I have a motion? I'll entertain a motion for these amendments.
You want to speak?
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Okay. All those in favor of these amendments, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay. Motion. These amendments are adopted. So let's see. We have to vote on the whole bill now. So there's a motion and a second on SB 211. Shall this bill now pass as amended? All those in favor, aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay. Motion passes. So
Representative,
we are good
thank
to go.
y'all. Y'all have really honored me by allowing me to come here this morning and talk about this. And I am so happy that I know you. Well, I'm happy I know all of y'all, but we're going to really work close together. Mr. Mike Griffin, I think, wants to say a couple words. Can we do that?
Yeah, we can give you a couple minutes. We're good on time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I didn't get in here till late, but I am Mike Griffin. I'm Public Affairs Representative with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we did support your legislation. I didn't get to come and testify either. I had so many hearings going on and missed it, and we appreciate Senator Hickman for what he's doing. Georgia Baptist has a program called Mission Georgia, and one of the 5 areas has to do with childhood literacy. So one of the things we're trying to do, because we represent about 3,400 churches and up to 1.5 million Georgians, and we're trying to encourage them to be a part of our program called Read Georgia. And that's where we asking our church members to make a commitment to local schools to go and spend at least 30 minutes a week just helping a child, reading to a child, letting them read to them and help. So I really appreciate what you're doing and Senator Hickman, because we definitely want to support y'all and encourage you in what you're doing here, and we thank you so much for it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So this will be taken up in full committee soon, and I'll let you know when that is. Thank you so much. Next, Chairman Dolezal. Okay. Next up is SB 204. And I've got LC 491390S. And you can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to be before you and the members of your esteemed committee this morning. I bring before you Senate Bill 204, which passed out of the Senate with unanimous support, both Republicans and Democrats. This bill deals with the accreditation process. As you all know, accreditation is very important, specifically and almost primarily. Not only does it ensure the quality of education in our schools, but it also is a requirement for the Hope Scholarship. We have worked with the largest accrediting agency that deals with about 80% of the K-12 schools in the state of Georgia, and have gotten to the point of the bill that I present to you today. And I do want to mention this was a previous priority of Senator Lindsey Tippins, who I served on the Education Committee with. And this bill fell just short last year, and I just want to mention him as really being the genesis for this bill and the one that gave me the idea, and certainly want to honor him this morning. The bill recognized accrediting agencies on lines 47 through 50, and then it really tries to hone their focus on two primary elements. The first element you'll find starting on line 61, which is the quality of learning and teaching in public schools. And we put a floor of the accreditation consideration that shall be not less than 65% on line 64, but we do give some flexibility with the State Board of Education to determine the ultimate percentage as long as it's not less than 65%. The second accrediting agency consideration that we have in here is on line 69, which is the financial efficiency of the system. And again, we're not prescriptive in the percentage. It could be obviously as high as 35%, but there is some flexibility there with the State Board of Education to apply that as they choose. Starting in lines 85, you'll see some recognition of due process for the schools that are undergoing accrediting. And then line 105 is really the only other, what I would say is most significant portion of this bill. And this was one of the things that Senator Tippins was highly focused on with his original version. And that is to ensure essentially that there's no cross-selling, so that the accrediting agencies cannot identify a deficiency in the accreditation process and then offer to resolve that for a fee. So they can offer to assist the school system if they wish, but it can just not be an additional fee. So we want to ensure that the accreditation process is kind of clean of any business considerations by the accrediting agency, and want to thank the team at Cognia for helping us massage the language, particularly in this section, to get it to a spot that everybody is happy with. And with that, Madam Chair, happy to answer any questions from you or the committee.
Hey, do we have any questions? Okay, Representative Evans, I think you beat Representative Carter to the punch this time.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you for bringing this bill. So actually, could you talk a little bit more about the work with Cognia? Because I would just be interested. You said that they helped massage the language or whatever, because I think they were a target. They were one of the objects of concern in drafting this bill. Yeah, so I would like to know.
Yeah, so
how
the
those
main
conversations
two
have gone.
changes that we, and thank you for the question, the main two changes that we implemented with them, and I think Jay Morgan's here this morning, he was a minute ago, and he works alongside of them. The original version of this bill had line 64, the focus on quality of learning and teaching. We had that prescriptively in the original version of the bill at 80%. And they asked for some latitude for the State Board of Education to be able to move that as they deem fit. And then we changed the floor there to 65. So rather than locking in at 80, that was one of their changes. And then the other main ask that they had, which we agreed to, was the portion I previously mentioned that's on line 105 to 109, which specifically states that they cannot offer to provide for an additional fee any sort of resolution service that they would find during a deficiency or a recognized deficiency in the accreditation process.
Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you for bringing this bill and keeping Senator Tippins alive in the General Assembly. Because we had talked a little bit a few years ago with our former chair too. Them having a senior moment. No. Oh, it's okay.
You don't look senior enough to have a senior moment representative.
Trust and believe. But anyway, and I think, and I was trying to look up the bill that passed out of the House to make sure that the percentages were in line, because it was 65. So thank you for that. And the language that you put in here, because I think one of my contentions with the bill that came out of the House was that it prohibited a company that was providing accreditation to offer any other services, but you gave them the option, but they can't charge the district. So I appreciate that. And then the other area that I understood that one of the reasons that we really needed to look at this, because in the past, the accrediting agencies were only looking at board governors, and the concern is it wasn't addressing education and not just, what was happening on the boards. So I want to ensure that we are covering that here, and thank you from my perspective, cleaning that little piece up, because if they do have the best services, we want to be able to take advantage of it. But you're right, we don't want to be gouged. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have just one question, and it deals with lines 51 through 56. And I know that this is a public school bill, but I have a question. So let's say an accrediting agency kind of gets sideways and is not recognized by, say our university system. It falls out of favor. It's not recognized anymore. What happens, like if a child's in a private school and they want to go to a University of Georgia school, and the accrediting agency that accredits their private school is no longer recognized? What happens to that kid that is maybe a junior or a senior and has gone to this previously accredited school, and now it's no longer recognized? Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Sure. So as you stated, this bill deals exclusively with public school accreditation, but as it relates to private school, the current code section that deals with this has a number of some accrediting agencies are recognized for private schools, and HOPE requires that you remain accredited. So should a school lose their accreditation, those juniors and seniors would have a challenge getting the HOPE scholarship. And so really this bill assumes that the public school accreditation agencies are going to want to be recognized accreditation agencies, so they're going to fall within the guardrails that we place in this legislation. And that is really the tension, I think, when Senator Tippins was dealing with some of the challenges in Cobb around this, that the primary concern from his constituents is what would happen to those juniors and seniors who are in public school. And that same challenge may be there with private. We may need to look at the private accreditation agencies similarly in the future, but this one just deals with the public.
Representative Chokas.
Yes, I've got a question for the senator dealing with this issue of accreditation. When you're dealing with public schools can lose their accreditation for financial reasons or management reasons, and not necessarily academic reasons, but that puts the child in a dilemma, because they're not going to be allowed to participate in the HOPE scholarship through no fault of their own from an academic perspective. So how could we address that?
This bill does not address that, but that is indeed a very valid question that may need some further conversation. That's always been, as I understand it, a requirement of HOPE. And I think that requirement, given the fact now that HOPE is such a prolific and valued program, I think generally does result in these accredited agencies working well with the public schools. And it's very rare that we see a public school lose their accreditation, because the sensitivity of that is recognized. And I think this bill, I think, is really wants to keep the balance there, so that the focus does remain around really just two things: the quality of the teaching and learning that's happening in the school, and the financial solvency, if you will, of that system. And so we want to make sure that's where the focus stays in the accreditation process.
Madam Chair, a follow-up, please. And I appreciate your concern, and I know where your heart is. Your heart is to help the children. But sometimes Yeah, I've seen this happen. In another life, I was on the state school board, and it's a rather small universe, and good governance and bad governance, and unfortunately, the children suffer from it. I could tell you some horror stories that I have experienced in the 2nd Congressional District School Board District of when school board members were not doing things that were beneficial for the students, and so I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this. Madam Chair, I'd like to work on this a little bit further. Would it be appropriate for me to move to table?
If you would like to make that motion, that is your right.
Thank you. I'd like to move to table until we resolve this, if that's okay.
Do we have a second? All in favor of tabling this so we can take some, oh, okay, I was looking the other direction.
That's okay. But I before we vote on this, I think I want to understand exactly what your concern is and why you want to table this particular piece of legislation.
Said, I just have some concerns about it. I think that there's some issues that we need to address as far as state school board, the local school boards, and how we can protect the children, and that's where my concern arises. I've seen some things that, when the senator said we can assume that they have this interest, I beg to disagree with you on that. And I've had personal experience in my district, witnessed several things.
I think I'd maybe share the representative's question. Can you maybe clarify, are you wanting to see governance added as a accreditation criteria, or what is it specifically that you think needs to change with the bill that's in front of you as it stands now?
Madam Chair, may I respond? Yes. Okay. I'm not completely comfortable with it yet. And I know the time is short and we need to address this, and I'll be happy to talk with you further, maybe offline. I don't want to belay the question right now, but I just have my doubts right now. I respect your bill. I respect your hard work, but I would like just a little bit more time to review it, if that's okay. Make sure that we're not assuming something that may not actually be there.
Representative Carter.
Yeah, and I guess we can deal with it in the vote, but I guess I'm a little concerned. I can't support the motion because I'm not understanding what's concerning you about the bill. And I know you want to talk to him offline, but considering we're going to have to vote on this, I would just like some clarity on what's not in here that you want to see, or what's in here that you want out. I'm just concerned with that.
Oh, okay. Chairman Chokas, did you? Yeah.
Good bill. We need to address it. I think that there's some assumptions in here that we don't need that I think we need further review on it, and that's what I'd like to do, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Now I forget to turn my mic on. Representative Howard.
Yeah, I was going to ask Senator as well. Do you see what he's asking for? I think it started with the idea of a school system losing their credibility because of financial reasons, and it affects the student in getting into school when the student is qualified, yet they lost their accreditation because of whatever, financial solvency or whatever. I guess my question is, do you see a path to where that could be amended somehow?
I guess I would submit to you, Representative, and to the chair, that's a consideration today. So that can happen today, and there's an unlimited amount of things that can cause a school to lose its accreditation today. What this bill is doing is it is limiting the number of things that can cause a school to lose its accreditation from unlimited to 2. And so I think that we certainly want governing boards to ensure that there are financial efficiency systems in in the school, considering it's almost 40% of our state budget. And then obviously, I think we would all agree that the academic portion that's first recognized in here is of utmost importance. So that's why that's weighted at least 65%. And keep in mind, the Board of Education can say that they believe that the first piece, the academic achievement piece, should be 90%, and that the financial piece should be 10. There is some flexibility for them to shift. Thank you for clarifying that, because no, I did not understand that to be the concern. But if that is truly what the concern is, that would be my answer to that.
Okay, thank you. So right now we have a motion and a second to table this. So we need to take a vote on that. All in favor of tabling this bill and taking another look at it, say aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, we're gonna take a hand vote at this time. Representative Maynard, you have a.
Is it still time for discussion, or we're past that?
We're just gonna take a vote, sorry. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a hand vote on this. All those in favor of tabling this and to just taking another look at it, raise your hands. All opposed? Okay. Okay, so that motion fails. Okay, so Representative Maynard.
So I know we just thank you, Chair. I know we just passed Representative Earhart's bill out about accrediting agencies, and if that does make it on the Senate side, both are defining accrediting agencies, and so how does that work if both are passed?
Hers did not get brought to the floor in the House.
Okay.
It passed out of committee, but did not make it to the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Number 28, is that Representative Daniel?
Thank you. I have a question for you. I know you said it pertains primarily to public schools, and that private schools are handled elsewhere in code, but is it possible that this piece of legislation would say there's a student that's in private school, and the specific example that I was actually given was they attend a private school for a special needs reason. Is it possible that this legislation, if put into place, would prevent that private school from having the ability to be accepted into colleges or apply for scholarships because of the accreditation?
No, Representative, this bill does not change the current law around accreditation for private school at all.
Okay, Representative Carter.
Thank you. Senator Dolezal.
You got
Close.
way closer than most people get, so.
Okay. Anyway, I won't mess it up. Okay, so currently, can you and like walk us currently, from my understanding, the accreditations in our school districts are now mostly board governance and not necessarily financial, but not financial, education. But this policy now will add not just board governance, but will address education.
So the current, the answer is it depends. Because there are different accreditation agencies in the state, and they can use a different rubric. So there's not a prescriptive rubric for them to use. The goal here is to standardize this across the multiple accrediting agencies, to give guidance to them about what we believe are the most important things that should be considered in the accreditation process, to give the latitude to the State Board of Ed to use that sliding scale between the two criteria that are mentioned here. And then ultimately the other piece in here would be to assure that the analogy that I've used is that the doctor is not the pharmacist, right? So that you're not diagnosing something and saying, oh, by the way, we can fix that for $100,000. And so that's the other focus of this bill, is to ensure that there's essentially not a direct business interest tied to the way that the accreditation process is done as it relates to boards being pressured to remedy certain things for a fee in order to keep their accreditation.
Representative Evans.
Thank you. And so, and in this bill, so now Cognia does, I mean, the credit agencies do look at board governance as one of their criteria, and now that will no longer be included. It's just school performance and financial performance.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We had a couple people I saw come in late that might not have seen the sign-in sheet. Is there anyone from the audience who wants to speak to this bill? Okay, thank you. I just thought I'd give you the option. Representative Carter.
Oh, at the appropriate time, I'd like to offer a due pass.
Okay. Okay. Are there any more questions at this time by anyone? Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
I would like to clarify a point.
Okay, if you want to come to the podium, Mike, that would be great. Thank you. And introduce yourself, please.
I'm Phil Murphy, Executive Director of the Georgia Accrediting Commission. I would like to clarify, we do not accredit districts. We accredit individual schools. So we don't, the board behavior has very little impact on our accreditation. We only have 2 standards related to it. So I just want to clarify that a lot of attention has been going on board behaviors and school accreditation. It has little impact on our accreditation because we only do schools, not whole districts. If you have any questions.
Oh, any questions from anyone? Thank you so much. Okay, so I don't see any more questions, and Representative Carter has made a motion do pass. Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Representative Chairman Chokas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to amend Senate Bill 204 LC 491390S and insert LC 491396S. And if we could get Courtney to pass those out for the members of the committee to review. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you for getting those passed out. Representative Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be on record, say this is actually really out of order that this substitute has been here the whole time, and at the time to vote on SB 204 that we're expected to read this bill and consume it at this moment.
This is the bill. This is Representative Earhart's bill that we passed out of this committee the other week and passed out of full committee.
Right. And again,
so it's actually not out of order because we have read this entire bill and voted on it.
So why didn't we have it before we're at the point of voting on SB 204? I mean, you already had it and you knew that you wanted to substitute it. I think we're at the point where we got to stop playing games with each other. This is ridiculous.
Representative Maynor. Okay. Representative Daniel.
when we voted on this bill the other day for the substitute that was just offered, was it passed unanimously?
It'll take me just a second to
Thank you.
while she is discovering that, Chairman Chokas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason for the substitute is there's no appeals process, and I think that that needs to be a part of this legislation.
Okay. Representative Maynor.
I wanted to know if the author, Senator Dolezal, has a copy of the substitute.
Representative, I do not.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, our vote for Representative Earhart's bill the other week was 14-1, and I believe that it was Representative Carter who was the no vote.
Thank you.
Representative Carter.
If the amendment that he's concerned about is an appeal process, would the author of the bill be amenable to a friendly amendment to his bill by adding an appeal process?
I would merely point the committee to line 97 in my bill.
Okay. Okay. After we vote on this amendment, then you can offer up another one. Is the way that we have to do that. Representative Maynor.
I would like, Chair, to see if the author of the bill can have time to give us comment before we vote on an amendment.
Since I wasn't provided any intention of this action, I'm scanning this as quickly as I can. I do see 65% overall accreditation assessment, which looks like the academic portion. I see 35% funding, just different language. I would say one difference I highlight there is the request from Cognia that is in my bill that is not in this bill is for the Board of Education to be able to use the 65% as a floor, but slide that up or down as they deem necessary. This is locked in at a number as opposed to giving any ability for the board to make that change. And I apologize, I'm just not a speed reader, so I can't identify any other differences in here at the moment.
Representative Evans.
Yes, I was wondering if Council, if they drafted both bills, if we could ask them just about the difference between the two. Would that be appropriate?
Would you like to weigh in?
A photographic memory of every bill I've drafted, so
Oh, come on.
to be able to do a side by side, I think I would pale in comparison to Senator Dolezal's efforts so far. I can do some math. The Senate Bill 204 has lines 1 through 137, whereas the Representative Earhart's bill had lines 1 through 232. So there's approximately 95 more lines of legislation in Representative Earhart's bill. There is a separate proposed code section in Representative Earhart's bill that would appear at lines 194 through 227 that speaks to a detailed process for appeal. So that would be a substantial difference between the two. Representative Earhart's bill also includes a change to a different code section that is not included in Senate Bill 204. So if you're looking at Representative Earhart's bill, and I'm sorry, I don't have a copy in front of me, so I'm not sure what the bill number is. But in Representative Earhart's bill, starting on lines 33, thank you, there are amendments to Code Section 20-3-519, which is part of the Hope Scholarship part of the code. And that would speak specifically to the agencies that are recognized under Georgia law as accrediting agencies. And that is not included in Senate Bill 204. So I would suggest that the two most substantial changes would be these two: the change to the accrediting agencies as defined under Georgia law, and the substantial explanation of the appeals process for when there is a dispute between the school and the accrediting agency. I think that would account for the majority of the differences between the two bills. And in addition to what Senator Dolezal already noted, with his bill having flexibility for the state board to set the standard for the assessment of academic performance, with 65% being a floor, whereas in the House bill, 65 is static at 65 and 35 respectively for financial performance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Representative Maynard.
In one of the things that I did like about, thank you, Chair, one of the things that I did like about Representative Earhart's bill was the public records component. Whichever one we end up going with, I want to ensure that we do keep the open records ability available. I asked my assistant to bring my glasses.
Ledge Council.
The provisions of the two bills on that point are either identical or substantially similar. In Senate Bill 204, those would be starting at line 110 thereafter, and in House Bill 506, it would start at line 145 and thereafter. So although there is not, neither bill specifically references the Open Records Act for somewhat technical reasons regarding the agencies that are covered under the Open Records Act, both bills do provide for a substantial element of transparency, with accrediting agencies having to make certain documents available for public inspection.
Okay, I know we got started just a little bit late, but we only have about 3 more minutes left before another subcommittee needs to get in here. So Representative Maynard, one more thing, and then we're gonna move on.
Thank you, Chair. If regarding Open Records Act, if an agency is receiving federal funds or state funds, they're still not obligated to the Open Records Act question.
Madam Chair, so it's really a function of the percentage of funds that you earn from state agencies. So if we were to have an accrediting agency that it is a national or even an international operation, they would have funding revenue sources that would be large enough that no matter really how much money they get from the state of Georgia, it would not meet the threshold for them to be considered an agency under Georgia law. If it was an accrediting agency that operated exclusively in Georgia, then my presumption is that the Georgia Open Records Act would apply to them, because presumably the majority of their funding would come from Georgia organizations. But if your accrediting agency is large enough, it's likely that they would not meet that threshold, and that's kind of the technical reason for not just specifically referencing the Open Records Act. A large enough organization would not meet our definition of an agency upon which the Open Records Act is binding.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on with this. I don't have any other blinking lights here. So we have a motion right now to amend. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Aye. Um, okay. Okay. In my opinion, that was clear, and this amendment passes. Okay. Okay. We will do a hand vote. So, if all in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, it passes. So let's just vote on the whole thing. There's a motion and a second for SB. What number are we on now? 204. Shall this bill now pass as amended? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Like sign. Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to stand adjourned, and we're going to move on to our education policy subcommittee meeting.
All right. Hey, for those in the audience, we are at ease right now. We're the Senate's on the floor, so we're trying to get our sponsor off the floor and in here. If any of y'all do want to sign up to speak, I believe we do have a sign-up sheet up front for anyone who wants to testify to the bill. So we'll stand at ease for another about 5 minutes or so. All right. Thank you, everyone. I will go ahead and begin the Education Policy Subcommittee here. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. Appreciate the Senator for joining us as well. Two things, just quick comment. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the loss of our colleague, Representative Tish Negisi, and our thoughts right now with her and her family. And just praying over them today. And I know all of us are kind of coming in with a little bit of heavy heart today. Number two, one of the things I always do to start off our subcommittee meeting is, do we have any teachers in the audience or former teachers in the audience? Would you mind standing so we can give you recognition? Thank you. Best time of the day is when I get to send my kids to school and hand them off to you guys. So, yeah, you sit down. Don't worry. All right. With that, I've asked Brent if you'd open us up in a quick word of prayer.
God, we thank you for today, and we just first ask that you be with the family of Representative Negisi and just all that she encompassed and impacted in her world and her family. And as we're all saddened here, we know that your ways are not necessarily our ways, and that you have a plan and purpose. And right now we speak peace over the family. We speak hope. And we just ask that your covering just fill this place and fill their home. We pray as well for this meeting, that it will go according to your purposes. And we ask for your direction and guidance in all that we do. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. With that, I will turn it over. Senator Anavitarte, we've got Senate Bill 32 and Senate Bill 45. Why don't we go ahead and begin with Senate Bill 32. I'll be reading from, I've got LC 491209S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Take it away.
And I apologize for being late, and thank you for extending grace as the Senate is running behind today. Senate Bill 32, Alyssa's Law, named for Alyssa Haladeff, who was one of 17 students killed on February 14th, 2018, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Alyssa's Law is a bipartisan legislation that aims to improve public safety response times to a life-threatening emergency. Versions of Alyssa's Law have passed in Florida and New Jersey with bipartisan support. The state requirements contained in this bill are based on recommendations from the Florida Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, as well as the Texas House Committee report on the Uvalde incident. Alyssa's Law requires public schools to provide all classrooms with mobile panic alarm technology. Mobile or silent alarm panic technology is an emergency alert system that allows for immediate contact with first responders that can be triggered discreetly, such as a wearable alarm button like those that are currently deployed in schools around the state and including this state capitol. These connect to local public safety answering points. Senate Bill 32 also requires that the Department of Administrative Services to issue an RFP for one or more vendors for a statewide convenience contract that school systems can choose from to comply with the bill's provisions. DOAS must consult with the state school superintendent and including GMA prior to issuing the RFP. Many schools already employ systems that meet requirements of Senate Bill 32, so this bill does not require them to re-procure a new system or replace something that's already in place. Additionally, the governor's proposed FY23 Appropriations Act that we all have passed included $115 million in school safety grants and $50,000 per campus that could be used for the purpose of this bill. So it's not an unfunded mandate. Systems like this will require to be deployed, will be required to be deployed, will save lives of Georgians, not just when the unthinkable happens, but for more commonplace staff or student medical emergencies, or preventing incidents from escalating by buying precious time from moments for school resource officers to respond. If it's good enough for the senators and the House members in the state capitol, we ought to provide no less to our students and teachers throughout the state. Mr. Chairman, I know when we passed this bill in the Senate, we did receive some feedback and made some tweaks based on GMA and our emergency management response folks to make sure the bill kind of connects to their systems. I know I talked to DOAS last night. I think they have some edits or amendments they want to make maybe in a committee sub. I've reviewed those last night and this morning. I'm open to those changes to make this a little bit more seamless on their side of the business once we get this bill passed through the legislature. And with that, I'll take any questions. And I'll catch my breath.
Thank you so much. With that, it looks like, well, first, let me ask you, just so we can get kind of a clean version here. You had mentioned a potential amendment. Do you want to kind of run that language through us now? Do you have that?
So I have it. I did not bring it with me,
Okay.
But I can send it to the committee.
Okay, that would be great.
I'll make sure I do that shortly when we finish.
That'd be great. Representative Evans
Thank you.
to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Senator. So this emergency services technologies, is there a certain, like, how many companies provide this type of service right now?
So as far as I'm aware, I think there's a handful of those that do this. I know, so I'll speak for my school district, my Senate district, for example. I know in Polk County, they currently employ this kind of technology in their school district based on conversations I've had with school board members and the superintendent. They have a little bit more holistic approach. They also have a school police department that works with local sheriff and Polk County police. So all of this technology is integrated. So if a medical, alert happens, or if there is an active shooter, the technology is allowed to be engaged. It goes straight to emergency management. Whereas in my current county, where I live in Paulding County, most of the schools have kind of what I deem almost old school panic buttons, where maybe somebody in the principal's office or in the front office may know something's going on in a classroom. But I think the challenge is that until somebody in public safety or law enforcement knows, there's an active event going on, it just breaks down the response time in terms of what's going on to get to that classroom or to the building. So we hope that this will increase security times. One of the sad things I learned from one of the folks that's been working on this in Texas, from one of the providers, is that I believe this same technology unfortunately was used during the Uvalde incident, but because training was not done and it wasn't kind of done and implemented in the right way, this technology could have saved those students' lives, but because it wasn't implemented properly, there were challenges around it that led to unfortunate loss of life by students and those on that campus. So if the training is done properly and everybody's bought into the safety of what's going on inside a classroom, we believe that this is beneficial. I know a statistic, almost like half the school districts in the state use some sort of technology similar to this, not panic buttons, but something similar to this. I know my colleague in the Senate, the senator from the 6th, he used to be the chairman of the Atlanta Public School System. When he was the chair of the school board, they implemented a system, but it wasn't really at that time related to active shooter situations. It was related to medical alert situations for teachers and students in the school district to get EMS times more quickly responded and those things. So those are my thoughts on that. It's a good question.
Thank you, Representative Evans. I'm going to go to my far right, Representative Daniel, with a question.
Yes, could you repeat the amount of funding that was put in the budget for this, if you don't mind?
Last time I checked, it was $115,050,000 per campus based on the governor's recommendation.
Okay. Do you have any idea how much a system like this might cost in terms of like how much of that budget would this take up, and would it take away from anything that's already currently being funded in public safety?
So based on the new monies, that would not take away from anything currently. I think it really just comes down to your school district size, how many schools you have, which facilities are you employing this in. I know in Paulding County, my assumption would be, just having been on the school board there, that all 33 school buildings and probably a couple of ancillary facilities would fall into the realm of this. Some of those school facilities, I mean, the cost could range from anywhere to $2,000 to $4,000. If you're talking about a larger school with probably more employees and it's a more complex situation, and potentially even a more complex school security plan that the school districts are having to submit, which I believe are now also being submitted to GMA at the state level. This money should be able to cover those costs. I think in the past, when I was on the school board in 2019, we would receive school grant money from the state, and sometimes it wasn't enough to really do anything other than maybe some training or maybe install a couple of panic button systems. But I think based on what the governor's proposal is, I think it's a good amount of funding. I think they have an impact on an individual school. And I think the other part too is because it covers every school, I think the other part is that it doesn't force a school district to have to pick a school as to where they want to put that funding, which I think becomes a very dangerous exercise, that I'm going to pick your school over my school. Right. One has maybe greater technology or processes in place versus another school. And I think not for every school district, the 180 in the state, I think there were probably some inconsistencies that people could identify throughout it. I'm sure the floor leader here could speak more on that, being a former school board member too. But those are my past concerns, and I think the approach this year to make it a little bit more holistic, but give the flexibility to the school districts, it's there. I think at the same time, the local share of school districts beyond what the state is doing. If you're a school board and you're not carving out money to do this type of work, then no offense to local school boards, but shame on them for not doing that.
That's right. Thank you for bringing this.
Thank you so much. Good question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to go to my right. We're going to work down the way here. Number 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say, when I was superintendent, we did have this type system in our school system, and there's definitely multiple funding sources for it. So you still have ones there. Not at the time, there weren't a lot of vendors at the time. So you said it's increased a handful, so that's good. So it's more than just one vendor. Right. So I appreciate what you're doing regarding the school safety, and I think this is just probably another tool for people to use to make sure we keep our kids and teachers safe. So anyway, I like it, and just want to let you know it did work. We've used it before, and it did come, and we did use it effectively one time we had to use it. So
thank you. And I think the other part too, not to belabor the point, but I think to make sure that those school security plans are done accurately, timely, and the opportunities as they're reviewed, I think this kind of folds into that opportunity, because one thing I found as a school board member is I think historically I don't think those plans were really taken seriously, and I think because of the world we live in now, I think they are. So I think anytime we can take the plans and the technology and bring those things together with the frontline folks, I think it really will validate that our school leaders, such as you in your previous life, and our superintendents and board members now, equipping them and our school resource officers to be able to do their jobs.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to pause for a second and offer up what I hope is a friendly amendment here to line 33, right where it reads, issue a competitive solicitation for one or more vendors. I'm going to change one or more to multiple vendors. The rationale being, if DOES issues a solicitation and picks one, and another school system has already chosen another one, I don't want them to. So I think if we can clarify that to read competitive solicitation for multiple vendors, that'll give our existing schools some flexibility. So if the author's okay with that.
Yeah, in the language I had on Mr. Withington's phone, I can't pull up now. Basically, kind of touched on that, but it also touched on the fact that based on procurements that they've done at the university level, that some of this the opportunity may overlap with the K-12 systems. So there may be some opportunities to even make it more seamless, so that if the General Assembly and the governor decides that they want to move forward and get this done quickly, then this could be rapidly accelerated to be put in place in the schools that maybe need the supports.
Well, I'll ask the gentleman who brought you the phone to put in his password. So better not be 1, 2, 3, 4.
TikTok.
Yeah, with that, I'm going to go to the floor leader to my right. Floor leader Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. And my tardiness was in relationship to ensuring that and appreciating the Chairman of Rules in the Senate will hear the governor's House Bill 147, I believe, upon adjournment on your side. So it is I would say, a companion piece of legislation. I appreciate the effort. And I was looking at some information recently where there are some of our school systems that don't have a lot of resources from the available funding sources that he mentioned. Some school systems don't have robust ELOST or local SPLOST, and some do. And this, I think, will help augment that need. And it's definitely something that I think will help bring teachers. So I appreciate your reference to that. I think it's a good option. I like the multiple. That way we don't, prevent a school system that's got a functioning system that complies with this intent. We don't want them to feel like they need to go and rebid or start all over or start from scratch. So at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion after he provides you any other language to clarify for a substitute.
Perfect. Yeah, and we got a couple more questions teed up. I appreciate
Mr. Chairman,
it.
I can read this if you want.
Please do.
It's a little lengthy, but I think it'll kind of drive the point home. And if we want, I don't know if we want to try and do this on the fly, or I'll do whatever you want to do, Mr. Chairman. So basically, the proposed language would be no later than December 1st of 2023, the Department of Administrative Services shall conduct market research in consultation, that's not even a word, consultation with the state school superintendent and the Governor's Office of Emergency Management to identify whether an existing competitive procured source of supply is available for a system that satisfies the requirements of paragraph 1 of section A of this code section from one or more vendors for the use by local education agencies. If no existing source of supply exists, DOAS shall issue a competitive solicitation for such source of supply no later than January 1st of 2024.
That's a mouthful. You weren't kidding.
Want to do a committee sub?
yeah. That's maybe what I might suggest here is if you'd get that language over to Ledge Council, and then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to ask and answer the rest of the questions here, and then let's meet. I think our next one is Monday.
That's fine.
Let's get you on Monday, get it cleaned
I'll go
up.
with Mr. Walker, and we'll get this worked out.
Yeah, that would be
I just
great.
want to make this easy. Yeah.
Same, likewise. With that, I'm going to go down to my front here, number 3. Representative Glaze.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just have one question. Of course, I want to say thank you for bringing the public safety bill to our classrooms to make sure our kids are safe. I didn't see anything in the bill that gives us a requirement for annual training, and so that we are making sure, like a drill, that this works every time. Is that something that we can put in here as a friendly amendment? Or is it something that you were going to bring with some other language?
So we don't, so let me back up. So I think from a training perspective, and it's a very good question, because without the training, as history has shown, it doesn't mean anything. I think once this is in place, I think at some level would be incumbent on the school district and public safety as they do whether it's school shooter drills, whether they do school security response drills based on these safety plans that they've done, this would be woven into that.
And Mr. Chair and Representative Glaze, we actually do have a House bill going through the process right now that addresses that that we considered yet. So that addresses that question. So we're good there.
Do you know the number?
I think it's 147. Yeah.
Is it over on our side?
It's going to rules today.
Oh, it's a good bill, huh?
It's a great bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. All right, now we're gonna double dip now on some questions. So I'm gonna go back to 17 and then 28. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have received notice that perhaps right now there is just one company that offers this, and I am concerned about that possibility, if that's true, that we would be giving, a contract for this type of business to one. There's only one vendor that satisfies that. Mm-hmm. And the other concern I have also is that, yes, we're giving our $50,000 or $60,000 grants to our schools, but there's several things they could be spending that money on, and now we're saying, but this is like the best choice. And I feel, but we're making it a shall. So it's like basically requiring them to spend this one-time grant on this system. And I have concerns about, and I'd like to see the school safety bill enacted and then see how we're doing and then add this in. But do you have any response to any of my concerns?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first question. So as far as I'm aware, and those that have approached me, there are multiple vendors, I think, interested in this from the private sector. I think the second part of that is, again, I think the state is providing a level of school security funding for each school. And just, Representative, I'm very blunt and don't, take this being disrespect, but I think if we're serious about school safety and securing our schools, I think our local school districts, if we're giving them the tools to do this, and if this is already being done in half or over half the school districts in the state, I don't know why this would necessarily be a challenge. I think at the end of the day, I know, like in my county, Paulding County, we operate on a pretty tight budget. I know we have very little margin of error, but if we're making the appropriate investments, security should be at the top of those. And I would have a conversation with my local school district as to how are they prioritizing those funds from their school district, but also with my local cities and counties in terms of how are they collaborating, I think, with the local school district to do this. I think there are ways to do it. I'm a believer that I think there is money sitting in local school districts that could be further pushed into the classroom, or it could be further pushed into school security initiatives in all of our communities, probably at some level. But I think as state leaders, when we have an opportunity to do something like this based on the tragic events we've seen in Florida and Texas, to try and avoid seeing history repeated, especially tragically in the Texas case where some of these systems may have existed and could have been avoided. I think we have an opportunity to lead, and at least from my perspective, I think that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'm going to take one more question because I know we got to move on to the next bill here. Once again, to my right, Representative Daniel.
Could you explain what it means by competitive solicitation in terms of how they secure these contracts? Is that through like a closed bidding process, or is it open? And that might, satiate some of the concern of whether or not it's a fair process.
Yeah, I mean, basically what will happen is the Department of Administrative Services, they do deal with all the vendors, procurement, anything with anybody who wants to deal with the state of Georgia, the policies, the rules, the ethics piece, all of that. All of it has to be publicly disclosed. I don't know of a single contract that gets vended out that at some level probably doesn't receive the opportunity to have also public comment. So I think all stakeholders involved, including whether you're a General Assembly member, a local average citizen, you're in the business community, or maybe you're even a school district and you have concerns, I think those opportunities present themselves for all of that feedback to be collected and then put into that process based on how DOAS handles it. Based on my previous experience, I think that's a separate process. I don't think that's a process that any one of us in the General Assembly obviously gets involved with, because of, I think if we're going to be morally, ethically, and top sound of what's going on, I think DOAS has very strict rules on how they do business in procuring this. I think it's for us just to set up the policy and the guidelines, and then the executive branch to carry it out as they wish.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go ahead and let's do this. So you've got language. Let's get that to Ledge Council. Another thing I'd encourage you to do, this committee heard a bill, I believe it was House Bill 469. Okay. Just jot that down. It was a mapping bill, and I love your bill because it's an alert system. And if we alert them and they get there and they don't know where to go or how the whole thing's mapped out, it just seems to me the two they might fit in tandem together.
Do we have that bill too?
No, that did not make it over on crossover.
Shucks.
So I'll let you kind of connect. It was Chairman Penny Houston, her bill. So she told us it cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million or so. So I'll tell you, put the two together, it sounds kind of like a win-win to me. But I'll let you guys have those conversations. Come back. We'll get you
There's
on.
a lot of House bills that like to go on Senate bills, so you know.
No comment. No comment. But yeah, we'll get you back early, and we'll get that through
Okay.
probably on Monday. Is there anybody in the audience who signed up to speak to the bill? Yes, sir. If you go to the podium, please. And we got a second bill, so just keep it a couple minutes here.
I have only 2 points. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Buddy Costley. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders. And I have 2 points I'd like to share with you today about this bill. First of all, I want to thank Senator Anna Vitarte, who is extremely collaborative on all of his bills with us. But on this one, he did take feedback from us. One thing was very important for us was the procurement process. Our fear was that if a system already had a system that qualified, it was very important that language be placed into the bill that they did not have to change to then comply with this list that was on the procurement. So we felt it was very important that there were multiple providers so that there is not a monopoly on it. But more importantly for us is if a system had already purchased, because these systems can be expensive, that they not be changed. And it's my understanding if we're looking at the right sub, that would be 28 through 31, where they shall not be required to procure or implement new or additional capabilities, et cetera. As long as that's still in the language, we're very appreciative to Senator Anna Vitarte for adding that language. Secondly, what has been brought up in the committee multiple times already here in the last 10 minutes is funding. And I just wanted to say to the House, this is maybe a future conversation. There are $0 in QBE for any safety. And we've been expecting our school system since 1999 and Columbine to fund every single SRO, every single facility upgrade, every single safety initiative, because our mamas and daddies expect it. They have funded that locally, and so that might be a conversation if future mandates come, which may be needed. Maybe have one of those conversations about updating QBE to make sure there's a line item for safety in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy. You've got one question. I'm just going to go down here to my left. Representative Wilkerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've talked about the initial funding of the system. Is there an ongoing cost with these systems that school systems would now bear the cost for?
It is my understanding that there is an installation cost that would be a one-time purchase, and then there would be a subscription service which would be far cheaper in ensuing years.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, buddy. With that, let's move on to your second bill. We thrive on efficiency here, so Senate Bill 45, cited as AJ's Law here. I don't have an LC number at the top of mine. There's Senate Bill 45 SFA, or CSFA.
That's what I got.
Mr. Chair, I'll let you
okay.
proceed.
So this is Senate Bill 45 dealing regarding school seizure action plans. On the Senate floor, we named this AJ's Law after AJ Taylor. AJ's here with me. I guess just like you've been with me, 18 months now, I feel like. We've been working on this. So we're pretty proud of, I think, how far we've come with this bill. We kind of casted a pretty wide net and have kind of got it down to where, based on feedback from working with Mr. Costley, and again, a quick aside, I do agree with Buddy. I second and third his comments about QBE funding and school security dollars down the road. But the schools, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, AJ and the advocacy groups that work on epilepsy and school seizure plans, and this policy discussion that's been going around this Capitol for a while. So Senate Bill 45 provides for the care of students being epilepsy or with a seizure disorder, provides for the completion, submission, review of seizure action plans, requires the DOE to develop training guidelines for model seizure action plans for use with local school districts. I'm going to go quickly through this, and if anybody has questions, just let me know. One of the changes that we made in the Senate was we started with a bill that was going to touch and require every teacher to go through training. My wife, she's a school teacher. She's in a co-taught science class. She's been a special needs parapro for a few years. And one of the things I got feedback from her and others was, you know, when a seizure happens, and as AJ has explained to me and educated me over the last several months, always just having someone there that knows how to respond and how to take care of the student and what to do. And so striking the balance between not requiring all teachers as a mandate versus having enough to where, you know, we have maybe enough teachers on a second grade hall or a first grade hall based on how our schools are designed versus having to run from one end of the school to the other, is kind of how we settled on one teacher per grade, which you'll see in the bill. Also, we annually added a section regarding the submission of the plan, so it's updated yearly. We also in the bill removed any sort of liability to the teachers and the school districts related to this topic. We also added a provision that if a trained nurse or trained seizure action plan personnel is not available, then other school personnel are authorized to begin emergency procedures, but not limited to calling 911. I know our physicians in the Senate, both Senator Watson and Kirkpatrick, gave some of that feedback as they work with us on the legislation. Another piece was to keep a copy of the seizure action plan readily available for school personnel working in the main office, field trips, the typical things that we know happen in schools. And also the governing body over seizure plans should ensure expertise is available to aid in any additional training if seizure personnel is available. So with that, I'll just stop, take questions. And we also have a letter. I got to find it in my notes here. Sorry, I'm like so disorganized today. Here it is.
And while you're looking for the letter, I'll
yeah, fire away.
Personal privilege. Yeah, I'll
the
get
Epilepsy Alliance America.
I'll get my question out of the way. Was there any discussion? I'm curious the burden on the schools. You said one teacher per grade should be kind of trained in this. Have you had any feedback or response from the schools on that? Is that a light lift, heavy lift for them?
So the folks we've talked to, because the training it's really an online module. So I think the balance is we recognize that teachers are already burdened with every training imaginable before school starts. And I know, Mr. Costley talked about this. We were working on this in the Senate, just being mindful of, the pre-planning time, those 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the school's ramping up, adding something to that burden or that workload. And so we wanted to be sensitive to where, philosophically, I personally believe, all teachers should go through this training. But I know that in some ways that's probably not feasible. And so when we thought about, do you just do one teacher per school? There may be more risk of doing that than, upside. And so trying to have that balance of one per grade level and then see how that works and work with the department to see, in the future, are there tweaks or changes we can make? I think it's possible. I think as you and I talked about yesterday, our goal was to try and mirror this as close as we could to, other training that's available, whether it's for autistic students or others in our schools, and to kind of leverage those best practices maybe with this, so it's also reasonable. But we're trying to be sensitive to, strike the right balance because of making sure it fits and helps students.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to go to my right, number 22, Floor Leader Wade.
Senator, thank you for bringing this. I appreciate you trying to find that balance, and I will tell you, this is not a suggestion or trying to hijack or amend anything. Locally, I know in my days of being on the school board, we had kind of a local plan that they dealt with students that had grand mal seizures, frequent seizures, even some that had a few, but it was intermittent. And I don't know if there's a way to get language that would not necessarily, and this is just my personal opinion, one per grade may be just a little over prescriptive. And I know people are going to love that and put that back on me on something else I've been working on. But I think there's a way to get at it to say, can the schools have flexibility to design to ensure that there are a certain number of teachers available for the students that are known to have that risk. Meaning most schools and students that have this and they know it, they disclose it quickly because the families want the teachers in the school to be aware of it. But there may be a school system that has, 200 students that have this, and they may be spread out, and that design that you've got would meet that. But there may also be a school system that has 5 students, and they might all be in elementary school, they may be in middle, and letting the schools ensure that those students, where they are in their schedules, that there's somebody readily available. I don't know how feasible that is, but I think that's how our system addressed it locally. Was every principal basically sat down with their teachers and said, hey, we know this child has, frequently has seizures. We want to ensure that they have somebody that's along their daily schedule, that they're in close proximity. And they just kind of handled that locally. I think the aim is extremely important, and I think that there may be teachers that would sign up to be that person. I know my wife is in the special ed field. She's taken training to do this without, a law.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm sure Buddy and some other folks in the teacher organizations could see if there is a tweak. This may be a good start. So I'm very friendly to what you're trying to do. And especially if you've got a student that has been recommending this and is an advocate for this kind of design. But that's just my thoughts as you brought this to me. And I don't know if there's a language change that could encompass what your intent is and the goal, but that's just my thoughts. I want to share that.
And I thank you, Representative, for that. I mean, I think the other part of it too, as I've gone on this journey with AJ, is I think the other part is like, there may be students, as you mentioned, that, we know of or maybe have a certain diagnosis, but I think the other part we're concerned about is like, the students that don't know they're going to have a seizure, or maybe, in life they don't realize maybe they're about to have an episode or they have a seizure disorder or epilepsy. And so I think our discussion, and I mean, I'll even let AJ talk to you all about this. I think just being mindful of, those times that we just don't know and being prepared for them in those situations. So that's where I think you're right, Representative. I mean, that was probably the hardest. I won't say it was the hardest part. I think all of this was very complex, but that was, it's more probably a philosophical, answer, and what is the right balance? Because as someone who doesn't, not a big fan of mandates, and somebody will say, well, Jason just brought you two bills today that mandates things. But I think because of the nature of what we're talking about, I think we have to do a little bit more. And I know my wife, one of the challenges that her and her peers and colleagues have is not having enough teachers with this training, and, response times to schools from EMS or whatever is already could be longer because stretched resources, not enough ambulance drivers, whatever the environment we're in right now. But do everything humanly possible to take care of the student, the family, the notification that has to go to the parent. Just anytime something happens in a school, I know I'm preaching to the choir, talking to all of you, everybody here, but I think just those cascading things that happen as this takes place. But
thank you, Mr. Leader. We're going to go 2 more quick questions because we're near the top of the hour. 23, Representative Townsend to my right.
Just to follow up, thank you, Mr. Chair, what everybody else said and what you said, Senator. I was kind of other end where I was thinking high school setting where with the grade levels, and they're really more set up by subject areas. And so you got your history hallway, your social science, your English hallway, PE downstairs. So I would just kind of, you've talked through it, no sense in talking more about it, but that's something to think about too. I'm going, well, is it enough? Is it more hallway based or building based? So anyway, thank you for this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We're going to go to my right, Representative Daniel.
I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate to the governor's floor leader over here and say that I would be hesitant to actually limit it further, and I would actually be more open. So 2 things. I think from seeing how this works in 2 different settings. So when I was in high school, I developed seizures after a vaccine, and I had a negative reaction and had seizures consistently for probably 2 years. And that was not something that my parents would have known. That is not something that my doctor would have been able to foresee. And it's not something I struggle with today. So this idea when students are coming in and out of schools, whether they move or they get relocated for whatever reason, obviously teachers get new kids every year. So I think that you're probably on target to have multiple people in the school that can handle this. My second thought, actually, I know this is kind of a newer realm, but I noticed that you did limit it to just elementary and secondary public schools. I would actually be interested to see if we could expand it, maybe not this year, time is short, but to include daycares as well. And I say that because my children were actually at an in-home daycare. And there was a little boy there that developed seizures. He was 3 years old at the time. And the lady that was, responsible, she had all this training and had done it for 20 plus years, but did not know how to handle a child with a seizure. So it really scared her and the kids that were there. So I think having something in place for our daycare providers, because that is something, it doesn't necessarily have to be epilepsy. His condition was if he had a fever. So even if he had like an ear infection, it gave him a seizure. And so this was something that was never predictable, could not be accounted for, but definitely occurred and was dangerous. So I like what you're doing. I think it's worthwhile, but I would like to see it expanded to daycares and home care providers if possible.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Representative. With that, I'd like to, AJ Taylor, if you would come to the podium here. And AJ, I want to thank you for being the namesake of this bill, for being a champion for it, and just for your courage to come down here and talk to us this morning. I'll tell you, we got a few meetings at 12 o'clock, so if you kind of keep it somewhat brief, but I do want to recognize you and give you an opportunity to speak to us.
First, to address your point, like the House member said as well, epilepsy isn't diagnosed until you have a couple unprovoked seizures. So as a person with epilepsy, I didn't know I had epilepsy until the third seizure happened. So it's not predictable. It could happen at any time. That's why the more people train, the better. But my name is AJ Taylor, and I've been working directly with the senator, like we discussed, for 18 months on this. I've been living with epilepsy since 2008, having my first seizure at 14 years old with not a single prior medical issue up until that point. I'm now 28, officially making it half my life living with epilepsy. At 14, I became a stat. I was the 1 out of 26 that would develop epilepsy. I was the 1 out of 10 that would have a seizure in their lifetime. And at 14, I saw epilepsy change my life. I saw doctor after doctor, took test after test, and went through medication after medication, and I still don't have control. I saw tears in my mom's eyes and worry in my dad's face every day when I went to school. I will never forget going to school the day after my first seizure and telling one of my friends what happened in the class as we entered the classroom. The response, isn't that the weird thing where you just shake on the ground? I was weird. I was different than the other kids, and my parents had to go into school each year having conversations with my teachers. But I went into school every year wondering, who's going to take care of me if I have a seizure here at school? Will someone stick something in my mouth, not knowing that I could break my teeth? Will someone not know to lean me on my side so I don't choke on my own spit or the blood coming from my bitten tongue? Will they know to move the items out of the way, such as desks or chairs, so I don't injure myself? Will they know to time the seizure, or will they stand and watch as they're scared of me? Over the years, I've had to teach people how to take care of me because I wasn't sure if I was safe. And I never want a student experiencing a seizure disorder or epilepsy, which is already hard enough, to feel they're unsafe walking to school. I've learned a lot from growing up with epilepsy. I've had to warp ignorance and bullying into a greater appreciation for self-worth. I've learned how to be brave and live in strength when myself or others thought I was weaker than. I learned the importance of community through love shared from my friends and family who understood. When I almost lost my life to epilepsy in 2014, it inspired me to live different and share my story instead of fearing it. But my story only represents one type of seizures. There's more than just grand mal seizures. Epilepsy and seizure disorders have been feared all throughout history. Even some related it to demonic possession in the beginning, and today most people only know about seizures from what they see on TV. The best way to beat fear is through acknowledgement and education. This free online training and education is already provided by the Epilepsy Alliance of America and takes 45 minutes at no cost to the state. The length of your favorite Netflix show can save a student's life. The Epilepsy Alliance of America also already offers a model seizure action plan, a one-sheeter that can assist a school staff and save a student's life, again, for free. According to the CDC, we already have over 100,000 people in the state of Georgia with epilepsy, 17,000 of the number being kids and teens. 20 other states have already passed seizure school legislation, so it's Georgia's turn. So let's make the Peach State 21. In closing, the epilepsy community is represented by a purple awareness ribbon. Purple, a color that represents the unity between reds and blues. So let's come together in unity today on this bill, and let's move it forward, because epilepsy and seizure disorders do not discriminate between race, age, gender, religion, economic status, or political party. So let's get school personnel trained and make families and students feel more safe. Thank you.
AJ, if you hang out for, thank you so much for your courage, your bravery, sharing your story. It makes a huge difference, and your time. I thank you for coming down here.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Chair, I hate to send you away empty-handed today, but here's what I'd like us to do, and I've asked the floor leader and Representative Daniel, if y'all would kind of connect. I just want to make sure that we're all good with the coverage and all that, that language. As long as we are and we get kind of comfort there, I say we bring you back and get this thing. Seeing a lot of nodding heads here, I think we all feel very good about this bill. So let's get you back on Monday, get everything moved out and on to full committee, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that works. I will get you language on, we'll get 32, we'll get that banged out. I'll get with Mr. Walker. Y'all just tell me what y'all want to do. I think AJ and I will be comfortable with whatever y'all propose, and then we're
Perfect.
set. Simple.
Awesome. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mr.
it. Thank you,
Chairman,
sir.
and all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.